Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Rush Street Elementary School. Thank you all for attending this event with Governor Murphy. Thank you, Governor Murphy, for coming to our school. I'd also like to acknowledge Mayor McCormick, Dr. Repollet, the New Jersey Commissioner of Education, Mr. Hassan, Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Education, representatives from the town's council, our Board of Education Central Office administrators, our Board of Education members, Mrs. Giordano and faculty, parents, and the entire Rush Street community. My name is Maria Medina. I am a resident of Woodbridge and a parent of a Rush Street student for the past 9 years. I currently have 2 children enrolled in this school. Samuel, 5th grade, 10 years old, Amelia, 3rd grade, 9 years old, and I also have Kiana, 13 years old. She attends Woodbridge Middle School. Our school community is thrilled about the construction of our new school. We are so fortunate and proud that our mayor, superintendent, and the Board of Education are able to work together to make this happen for our children. First and foremost, I would like to thank Governor Murphy for making the education of our children a priority and continuing to take steps to improve the lives of families like ours. Now I am pleased to introduce a man who is very familiar and a friend to the Rush Street School community. He spends a lot of time here, whether it's reading to our students in a classroom, hosting a pizza luncheon, walking to school with us, a National Walk to School Day, or attending one of our many school events. He has hosted our 3rd grade in his personal office for many years. Our students love learning about our community from his office at 1 Main Street. Now I am honored to present the mayor of Woodbridge, the best town around, Mayor John McCormick.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I don't think I need that little step stool. I want to thank Maria very much for those kind words and welcome everybody here to Rush Street School. I would first like to thank Rush Street School principal and part-time construction foreman, Tammy Giordano, for hosting today's event and for her leadership of not only of Rush Street School, but also over this terrific brand new construction project, which is coming along tremendously. Governor, this project is paid for actually by the township using funds we will receive from our downtown construction projects. No town in the state has the kind of relationship that the town and school district have, like here in Woodbridge. I'd like to introduce specifically some people in the audience now. Our Assemblywoman from the 19th District, Yvonne Lopez. The great director of the Middlesex County Freeholder Board from nearby Carteret, Ron Rios. From our Board of Education, Brian Molnar, Frank Della Pietro, and Sue Bourdain. Our Deputy Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Joe Massimino. From our town council, I saw Elizabeth DeJesus here before. I think there she is, okay. My Chief of Staff and the head of all of our redevelopment agency projects, Carolyn Ehrlich. We have Land Associates, they're our architect, and we have Dabco, our construction managers. We have Dave Pereira from Land, we have Ken Pereira from Dabco, no relation, and Ken Carl, the president of Land. Everybody from Land and Dabco, thank you. And most importantly, Governor, we have the best people here in the room, the teachers and staff of Rush Street School. Governor Murphy is no stranger to Woodbridge and has been here numerous times, including way back years ago when he was contemplating running. My Chief of Staff, Carolyn Ehrlich, and I had breakfast with him at the Rio Diner one day early in the process, and we encouraged him to run. And I'm sure that was all he needed to decide to jump into the race. For far too many years, Woodbridge was among the most underfunded school districts in the state of New Jersey, but not anymore thanks to the leadership of Governor Murphy. From way back at that Rio breakfast, candidate Phil Murphy talked about school funding, knowing the plight that we in Woodbridge faced. Working with our very own Assembly Speaker, Craig Coughlin, and Senate President Steve Sweeney, the governor has helped not only our taxpayers, but also our school children. 100% of the additional money that Woodbridge received in additional state aid last year went into property tax relief, both direct and indirect. 2/3 of it went directly to the revenue side of the budget, which instantly dropped the amount necessary to be raised from taxation. The other third went to pay for items that otherwise would have been paid for through the budget, which lowered the appropriations and provided this indirect property tax relief. Governor Murphy is committed to getting the state back to full funding, and he has the complete and total support of every single person in Woodbridge Township to accomplish that. We are thankful for his leadership and his overall support of Woodbridge, which would take me much more time if I explained everything that he and his team have done for us for the past year. We are proud to be his partner in the effort to reach full educational funding in the state of New Jersey, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce a great leader and friend, Governor Phil Murphy.
Thank you, Mike. Boy, that's a good introduction. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. Good morning, everybody. I feel like I'm in a class play up here, I have to say. I was an actor in school, so I feel like I should be reciting some lines. What a treat to be here. I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here. Thank you for joining us all and hosting us in many cases in this room at Ross Street Elementary School, number 11. Very important to say, right? We got to make sure we don't drop that. And I understand the motto is make every day count, which I think is a fantastic motto for our young folks and our educators and for all of us. I work very hard to live up to that motto on behalf of the residents, not just of Woodbridge, but around our state. Thank you, Mayor John McCormick, for once again welcoming me and us to this community. I have the shakes a little bit that we're not at the Rio Diner. That's normally, I got to go and get the holy water at the Rio Diner, and then I can keep going for the rest of the day. But today will be an exception. John and Carol, and it's always, there are a few people who only know him by one name. I think of Elvis, Cher, in Woodbridge, Carol. So Carol and John and I sat about coming to 5 years ago, I think, at this point, but it was a reconnection because John and I had known each other way back when. I used to refer to him as my oldest friend in the political or governmental scene in New Jersey, which didn't quite pay the homage to John because he's not that old, but among the longest tenured friends. So thank you for your great leadership and support. Maria, thank you for your kind words. I just reached over and told Maria that we have, among other things in common, that we each have a Samuel. Ours is in 10th grade, yours is in 5th grade, but thank you so much. It's like everything else in education, it does take a village, and that village includes moms and dads whenever they can lean in as you have, and you exemplify the very best. I won't go through everybody. I want to thank the deputy superintendent. I certainly have to thank the principal because I love her name, Tammy. So to an extraordinary principal and part-time construction foreman, hats off to you, and to all the educators and to your entire team, members of council, Board of Education, my dear friend, Freeholder Director Ron Rios, who was just reelected and sworn in the other night. He had 7,500 members of his family with him. I met 7,400 of them, but it was an incredible treat, Ron, and God bless you and your leadership. Yvonne, you are rocking it in the assembly and just are doing a phenomenal job. And you get to go to work every day with one of the, if not the strongest trio of leaders, I think, anywhere in the state. Because you got Senator Joe Vitale, who's with you, who is a leader on so many big topics in our state. Health care would be right at the top of the list. And your mate in the assembly, my partner in leadership, along with the Senate President, Craig Coughlin, which is an extraordinary lineup. More on Craig in a minute, but Yvonne, it's always a great treat to have you and to see you with us. And certainly the man to my left, when we met, he was he's got some deep roots, by the way, in Middlesex County. That has to be said. But when we met, he was the superintendent in Asbury Park. And people ask me often, when did things start to really transform and change for the better? And I say a little bit as an homage to our friendship and his Asbury Park time. I said, when the big man joined the band. For you Bruce fans, right? So Dr. Lamont Repillette, the Commissioner of Education's in the house. Let's get it up for Lamont there, right? I want to say a few words certainly on education and school funding, but before I do, please permit me, and Lamont wants to say a few words as well. I want to very quickly comment on the agreement that Senate President Steve Sweeney, the aforementioned Speaker of the General Assembly, Craig Coughlin, and I reached late yesterday afternoon on the minimum wage. This is a tremendous victory for working families in New Jersey. As Joe Biden would say, this is a big deal. More than 1 million families will now be able to envision their place in New Jersey's middle class. It will make New Jersey more affordable, and that has always been our goal. On July 1st, hundreds of thousands of workers will see an increase in their hourly wage to $10 an hour. And then on January 1st, that will go to $11 an hour. So last month, that same person was making $8.60 an hour. So in just over a year, they will go from $8.60 to $11. If you do the math and you're working a 40-hour work week, that's $96 that you don't have today that you'll have a year from today. And then that will keep going onward till we get up to $15. There's going to be a lot of talk, there already is, over the coming days about how this will impact New Jersey. And trust me, the net benefits are going to be enormous. But there's just one element, one aspect of that highlight reel, or that discussion that I think is worth noting. For countless young people who were not carved out of this agreement, and that's a huge deal. In a lot of other places, young people are carved out. They're not carved out of here. That means when they're going to work to help pay for college, to pay down their loans, that work will now go a lot further to helping them achieve their dreams. And again, that's just one aspect of how big a deal this is. I had hoped, Steve and Craig and I were going back and forth yesterday, I had hoped that the three of us could have announced this together in person, but we didn't have the ability to pull that together. But make no doubt, I am ready to work alongside the legislative leaders, beginning with the Senate President and the Speaker, to ensure the swift and overwhelming passage of this bill later this month. And I'm looking forward to the three of us standing together with lawmakers, with advocates, with residents of the great state of New Jersey when I sign that. Yeah. And again, I don't want to beat the same drum here, but I can't emphasize enough how important getting our minimum wage on a certain and responsible, and I emphasize the word responsible. This is being done responsibly. I had promised that we would not give sticker shock overnight to small businesses, to restaurants, to low-margin retailers, and this is not doing that. There's a particular tip of the cap to seasonal workers, to small businesses. So the word responsible, I think, really rings true with what we've achieved. But we are now on a certain path to $15 an hour, and that is a huge, huge deal for our working families and our economic future. As I said at my State of the State on Tuesday, and thank you for attending, by the way, making New Jersey stronger and fairer is not an either-or scenario. It has to be both. It can be both, and it will be both. And putting the minimum wage on a path to $15 an hour achieves that. This was a true team effort, and I am pleased that we were able to craft a measure that will benefit so many New Jersey families. So I wanted to get that off my chest, as they say. So we're here in Woodbridge, and I'm thrilled to be here. We're here because this community represents the promise of our efforts to properly fund our schools. Across the state, in fact, it has to be noted that only one other school district stands to benefit as much as Woodbridge from fully funding the school funding formula. New Jersey is home to one of the nation's top couple or three school systems. It is one of the things that makes us a great place to live and to raise a family. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by investing in our schools, in our educators, and in our communities. It happens by building on the progress of 2018, which saw the smallest increase in the average statewide property tax on record. That's something we have gotten away from in prior years. And a big reason was that school aid was cut by more than $1 billion per year over 8 long years, leaving property taxpayers to make up for the losses. But it is something that we are now getting back to. We're working our way back. It will not happen overnight, but we are working our way back to fully funding our schools, and our current budget makes the first important and significant down payment on that. And in addition to just putting more money in, as some of the parents around the state and administrators and educators know, that we also not just put the money in, but by ensuring a fairer distribution of school aid, we're getting more funding to where it is most needed for students and educators and property taxpayers. And that's why we're here in Woodbridge this morning. This community is an example of how our investments are beginning to show benefits to property taxpayers. And not only do you have an extraordinary mayor, but this guy is a certified public accountant and knows how to count pennies as well as anybody in this entire state, if not in the entire country. Taxpayers felt the stress of 8 years of uncertain and flat funding through annual increases in property taxes that averaged $82 and went as high as $132. But because of our joint efforts, we can begin to write a different story. This year, Woodbridge received nearly $5 million in school aid, new school aid, a 17% increase over the prior administration's last budget. And as a result, school taxes here, which make up more than half of the average property tax bill, like they do in most every community in the state, the average is 53% of your property tax bill. Because of that, things are moving in the right direction. Because of the investment we made, the projected school tax increase on the average household, I think, John, will be roughly 30% below what taxpayers had been seeing on average over the prior 8 years. And that was just from our initial investment in schools. And I want to give you an analogy of what this is to me. So the analogy is NJ Transit. The state had gutted its funding for NJ Transit. Where did they have to come up with their money? They had to raise fares constantly. And fares were up over the prior administration 30-odd% because the state wasn't stepping up and putting its fair share into its budget. This is a very similar analogy. If the state backs off of fully funding public education, mayors have nowhere else to turn. You got to be able to keep our education lights on and going forward. And that is what happened. Just like the commuters paid the increased fares, local property taxpayers had to make up for what the state wasn't doing. We want to rewrite that story, and we've begun to do just that. And by the way, on top of that, and I want to give another shout out to Craig Coughlin, because of the Speaker's efforts, many middle-class families were able to once again qualify for and receive a homestead rebate, taking further weight off of their shoulders. So in a few weeks, I'll be presenting our budget for the fiscal year 2020. That budget is going to continue our ramp up of school funding so we can keep seeing the property tax numbers in communities like Woodbridge move in the right direction and further protect middle-class property taxpayers. It comes down to this. The most effective property tax relief program is reinvesting in our public schools by the state so that local taxpayers shoulder less of the burden. We got away from that simple premise, and property taxpayers were left to pick up that lost $1 billion in aid. Now we're getting back to basics. This is how we're going to build a better and more affordable state where our next generation can grow and thrive and where property taxpayers aren't left shouldering the bill. Thank you again so much for hosting me so graciously today. I want to ask the Commissioner of Education to come on up and say a few words, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lamont Repollet.
Thank you for the warm welcome. It is great to be here with our governor, obviously his vision for a stronger and fairer New Jersey, and also the leadership of Mayor McCormick, and also We have our superintendent, Zaga. He's not here today, but he's a colleague, a good friend of mine. Our principal, Giordano, the parents gathered here today, and of course, the students, right? The reason we're here today. As Governor Murphy said, recent changes in the school funding formula have enabled districts like Woodbridge to be fairly funded. This school year, Woodbridge received a 17% increase in state aid, nearly $55 million more than the previous year. In fact, Woodbridge is among the top 3% of districts that saw an increase in aid. By providing additional resources to districts that have been significantly underfunded, we are on a path to creating a stronger and fairer school funding structure. You're now seeing a balanced approach to school aid. We've removed the growth caps on funding increases and are finally on a path to implement the state's school funding formula established in 2008. It is a priority to ensure our schools are receiving the funds they need to advance academic excellence for all students. As a former superintendent, I can attest to the importance of equity among state aid. When it comes to school funding, it is imperative that we get it right. The future of our 1.4 million students depend on it. I want to thank, as I said, the governor for his vision. I look forward to continuing his initiatives in the great state of New Jersey. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you, man. If it's okay with you all, we'll take a few questions. Before we do, just a quick weather observation. The storm that came through overnight into this morning was, as it turned out, about what we had predicted it would be. Very few outages, little challenging commute in places this morning, but it was about what we expected. We have a potential big one coming through over the weekend. I'm happy to take any questions you've got from the press on that, but we're going to be reconvening this afternoon at the State Police Rock at 4 or 4:15, and we're going to be speaking specifically to what's coming upon us this weekend, which is still a very wide window and a very wide range of potential outcomes, particularly given where you live. So to be determined. Anybody in the press have any questions or comments? Sir.
Any changes in the way you're approaching this upcoming storm?
Well, we're being, and I'll get into this in more detail later on, we got nailed in November with something that frustrated everybody, including yours truly. We let folks down. So one of the big lessons is to over-prepare. And count me in. I'm going to be the chairman of the over-prepare club. So we got equipment. In fact, we had it for last night's storm, so we've got equipment deployed all over the state. Roads have been brined. We're doing constant calls. I'll give you more detail later on, but preparedness is the big watchword. Last winter, we had a series of storms, and while there were commuting challenges, we largely, the commutes were actually largely reasonable given the storms. What wasn't reasonable is we had massive power outages, particularly concentrated in certain pockets of the state. The November storm was completely unacceptable in terms of the commuting experience, but we had very limited outages. We're preparing for something this weekend which could have elements of both, and I'll leave it there. We'll come back to you all later on this afternoon. Anybody else? Please.
A question about Park.
About what, sorry?
Park.
Yep.
And the high school graduation requirements. You guys have decided to request a partial reconsideration for that court decision, but that motion did not address what would happen to students who have not passed Park yet. What are your plans?
So I'll repeat a general position and ask Lamont to come up. I'm not a Park fan. I'm not a big high-stress test fan. I am an assessment fan. I got 4 kids, 21, 19, 17, 50. I want to know what their report cards look like and how they're doing, as any parent does. But let's do it in a smart way. Educators, and there are many in this gymnasium, should be at the point of attack. They should be less high stress, less study to the test, and much more iterative, shorter feedback loops. What are you learning as opposed to what do you have to know in order to pass a particular test? Park is like the bear hunt. I had wished we could get rid of it on day one. Believe me, we're trying to, but this is more complicated than we had thought before we got into office. I'll ask Lamont to come up and give you some more specifics.
So the recent decision does not stop I said the governor's initiative to move away and transition from part. I want to make that very clear. We will still continue testing because federal mandate decides that grades 3 to 8, and once in high school, we must assess our students. So we will continue testing as usual. However, we're working with the Attorney General's office, we're working with the governor's office, and some legislators to really kind of look at the short-term effects of the outcomes, right? Long-term is what we're going to do in regards to our students from 2020 beyond. Short-term is what are we going to do with our students this year and also 2020. We're working with that strategy. We're not ready to kind of unveil it right now because those are moving pieces right now, but we are working on a strategy to ensure that all of our students in 2019 will graduate the state of New Jersey with the requirements they need to meet.
Thank you.
That means still using the park for, as the standard?
Well, we must continue testing, as I said before, because of federal requirement. So this is not just a part question. This is more two-part, right? Long-term and short-term. Long-term is that we're moving away from part. We're doing it deliberately, and we're going to continue moving towards, as the governor said, getting rid of part. However, short-term is that we need to ensure that students this year are meeting all the requirements to graduate, and that's the Department of Education. That is our priority. Our priority right now is not looking at how we're going to do with part. Right now, we're concerned with the 90,000 students that will be graduating in 2019, ensuring that they're graduating with all the state requirements.
God willing, one of mine will be one of them. Another reason to keep me in your prayers. Anybody else from the press? You and the press, ma'am? Yes. Okay, give me 1 sec. Can we come back to you 1 sec? Anybody else? Okay, again, for the members of the press, we will be reconvening. Is it 4 or 4:15? 4:15 at the Rock in West Trenton and the state police headquarters. Please, and we'll lend you.
Good afternoon, Governor. I'm Jen Cavallaro from the Fair Funding Action Committee.
I know who you are, Jen. I thought you joined the press there for a minute. You got to get one of the badges.
I know. So first I want to say that I'm elated to hear you talk about a fair distribution of aid. That is music to our ears, obviously, recognizing that 70% of districts in New Jersey are operating under their 100% entitlement under the SFRA. So that being said, my question is there a reason why the DOE and your administration continue to use the capped aid deficit number of $1 billion rather than the uncapped aid deficit of $1.75 billion?
I have an idea. First of all, thank you for your good words. I'm going to get this gentleman to walk down off the stage and talk to you right face to face and answer that. Thank you all so much, Mayor. God bless you, buddy. Thanks, pal. Thank you all. Ross Street, number 11, we love you. Thank you, folks. Maria, thank you.